Check it out. This is Mr. Royce of Royce Media coming at you guys with yet another video. And this video is going to serve as an addendum to the video done by Black Ram 313 earlier today, which was entitled Are Sigmas Introverted Alphas? If you are not subscribed to Black Ram 313, go on over there to his channel, check out the video, subscribe to his channel. To me, he makes great content, but be warned, if you are sensitive and if you are faint of heart, his content might be a little strong for you. I personally think most of his content is great, so you can take my recommendation for what it's worth and slide on over there and subscribe. Anyway, in this video, Are Sigmas Introverted Alphas, he addressed the issue of the Sigma versus the Alpha, and he laid out what the Sigma is as opposed to the Alpha, how they're similar and how they're different. And I thought he did a great job on the video, and I want to take this time to add on something to as an addendum to his video that you all may want to consider. There's actually another class that was not discussed. The reason I want to discuss this is because throughout the manosphere, you have a lot of people talking about alphas and sigmas and betas. In fact, the alpha and the beta conversation gets pretty extensive coverage, where you have people calling other people beta male coons. We hear this from Wiggy G, who I think does this as a slight, and I think it is done for the shock value in order to generate views. And I think for the most part it works for Wiggy G. But we're not going to talk about Wiggy G too much in this video. What we're going to address is the Zeta. Now, getting back to the Black Ram video, he pretty much laid out what made alphas and sigmas similar, what made alphas and sigmas different. Now, the alpha is the face of the organization, the face of the group, the leader, the captain, so forth and so on. He's the top guy at the pile. And him being the top guy at the pile means he has certain things about his personality that lends itself to that, such as being outgoing, being an extrovert, being charismatic. He has some physical attributes at times, which that can be subjective, but generally he's a good-looking male. Generally, the alpha is probably one of the highest earners of his group. He's the go-getter. He's the guy that he is the face of the group, as I said before. Alphas tend to thrive on the attention of being out front, and in fact, they need it because it validates their station. Now, sigmas tend to be outgoing. Sigmas tend to be go-getters. Sigmas may be high earners. Sigmas hold a lot of influence within the group, as do alphas. The difference between an alpha and a sigma, and Black Ram pointed this out, which I'm just going to pretty much paraphrase. A sigma does not need the attention. They're fine without it. Sigmas are fine doing their own thing, and at times it is not unusual for a sigma to buck the social structure and do their own thing. You know, that being said, sigmas can play the leaders. Sigmas can get out front, kiss the babies, and wave at the cameras, and make nice well enough to keep the group appeased. But then a sigma is going to go dip out and do their own thing. They both hold a lot of attraction of women, and sigmas, because they tend to branch out and do their own thing, and they have a streak of counterculture in them. Sigmas tend to attract women with their quote unquote mysteriousness. Now, this is where the Zeta comes in. Zetas and Sigmas share a lot of the same characteristics. Some of the other characteristics of your Zetas, of your Sigmas, your Sigmas tend to be highly intelligent, highly skilled, and they are often held in counsel by alphas to make sure that the alpha is doing the right thing to be able to stay in front. The Sigma is pretty much the guy the alpha's going to look to and say, hey, am I looking good? You know, this is the right thing to do, right? And your Sigma usually serves the role in keeping the alpha in line. Lots of times, your Sigma will be the direct challenge to the alpha and will be the one most likely to pull the alpha back in line when the alpha gets out of line. And it is not unusual for a Sigma to replace an alpha, but a Sigma will do so long enough for another alpha to arise, and that Sigma, after making sure that alpha is legit and that alpha is standing on the square, that Sigma will step aside and let the alpha be the face of the group. Now, where the Zeta comes in, as I said before, Zetas and Sigmas share a lot of the same qualities, but there is a distinct difference between the Zeta and the Sigma. Both Sigmas and Zetas are both highly intellectual, and they tend to be highly skilled. They tend to be the types that people look to as being knowledgeable and being adept at whatever it is they're doing. Now, the difference between a Sigma and a Zeta is that whereas a Sigma is comfortable being out front for as long as they need to be out front, and they're willing to step aside when that time comes, a Zeta, conversely, does not want to be out front. A Zeta likes to play the rear. A Zeta is sitting in the back taking notes. A Zeta is typically the one who knows where the bodies are hidden. It knows the real numbers. And your Zeta is your consummate professional. Your Zetas tend to be consumed with the training. They tend to be the professional at the job. They tend to be the subject matter expert. Now, when you look at different structures, like if you look at how the government is set up, as far as you have your president, you have your vice president, and then you have your your war council, which is where your generals and stuff are. The generals could really be considered your Zetas in that environment. They specialize in a certain area. They know what they know what needs to happen, and they tend to do the dirty work. So in that structure, that's where they fall in as Zetas. When you look at smaller groups and stuff, your Zeta tends to be your go-to guy. When you have to get something done right, quick, and without a lot of frills, you go to your Zeta. Your Zeta is that guy. Now, how this applies to the manosphere is that a lot of guys are identifying themselves as Sigmas because they don't want to be seen as alphas, which is fine. You know, being an alpha is not for everybody. They don't want to be seen as the attention seekers and everything. But in all actuality, many of these guys are Zetas. They're not betas, where a beta is a follower, a go along to get along guy. They're not going to make waves. They like structure, and in fact, they need structure to keep them in line. They're the like I said, the go along to get along guys. They're going to do what they're supposed to do when they're told. They're comfortable in their place in the structure. They don't want to be out front. They want to hide in the middle among the other betas. That's not a bad thing. It's just different. Whereas, again, your Zeta is the guy that sits in the back, He observes, he takes notes, and when there's time for precision action to be done, and it needs to be done with no frills, and it needs to be done quickly and efficiently, that's where your Zeta steps in. I think it's important to bring out the role of the Zeta in the male hierarchy, because a lot of these guys that call themselves Zetas, they don't want to be out front. They don't want to be out front at all. They don't want to be the face of the movement for anything. They just want to be able to practice the gray man theory, which is not to have any flashy colors, not to do anything to stand out, but to be, they'd rather play, like I said, play the back, take the notes, and move in silence. These are more of your Zetas. You know, your Sigma can do this, and your Sigma can be out front. Your Sigmas are flexible enough to do that, and they're comfortable in any role that they're given. They don't need the attention of the group. They don't need to be out front and being seen as the leader. Whereas your Zetas, they kind of abhor that leadership, and really your Zetas, if they didn't have to be a part of the group structure, they probably wouldn't. They would probably just go and do their own thing and work in their peace and quiet, but get things done. Your Zetas are your real men of mystery, and they're fine with that. They're fine working in that arena of being your men of mystery. Looking at all of this, I think more of the male hierarchy needs to be examined in the manosphere. We need to talk about, just like we talk about the alphas and the betas and the sigmas, and now that I'm introducing the Zetas, we also need to identify what the gammas are, and we need to identify what the omegas are. In future videos, I will be talking about the omegas and the gammas and how they fit into the male hierarchy, and how we see these types in the manosphere as well. And I'll describe what those personalities are like and what their roles are, and then I'll draw comparisons, both showing similarities and the differences in the other groups in the male hierarchy. Anyway, I'm gonna end this video right here. This is Mr. Royce Media. Like, share, subscribe. Get in the comment section. Tell me how you feel, even if you want to bitch, because I know that's what some of y'all want to do, and that's what some of you all are going to do. I'm out.